Hello, welcome to this month's Think Big for package, where we talk about ideas that are a little further out than this milestone and give everyone a chance to collaborate on things like design discussions and product strategy, as well as like how we organize and the team and how we work. We have a full agenda today. I think the first item is, it says me, but Ian, maybe you would be willing to go through this one. It's discussing the design for the dependency proxy and how we could potentially move this MVC forward.
Yes. Give me one moment. Let me share my Figma, maybe. Oh no. I am on the wrong laptop and my Zoom does not have permission. So Tim, would you mind pulling up the design and I would be happy to talk about it in that super awkward way?
Yeah, one sec, just pulling it up.
Thank you so much. While Tim does that, basically what we're talking about is implementing usage data around packages. This is one of the things that a lot of our larger organizations have really been striving for. And so it focuses on the basic principle is how often is it being downloaded is really what they want to know. And then that kind of encapsulated our MVC idea. And then from there, what I would like to discuss with the group is how do we expand that out to include a bunch of other data. So starting right at the top, what we're doing is in terms of the design, we're introducing a usage tab, and then using some of the components that we already have in tabs to show a trend. So in this example, there's an increase in downloads by 12% week over week. And so we show a pretty basic chart. This is a chart we've seen in a lot of other GitLabs. So in terms of the design of the data visualization, it's not that unusual. It should be pretty similar. But we're starting with, in theory, how many downloads this week, and then the week previous, and the week previous, and showing some historical data. The MVC would be week over week, because I think we discussed that that was the easiest thing for us to track. It would be good if we could expand this out to how it's going on the daily basis, weekly, monthly, and give some users some flexibility based on their needs, as well as being able to select some timelines. After we get through the MVC is really where it gets interesting, and this is where the conversation I think can get really exciting. The next part that users have constantly talked about when I've spoken to them is around not just what's down or how many downloads, but where is it being downloaded. So I show in the UI here a pie chart. In theory, hopefully internal pipelines should be the biggest consumer of our packages if everyone is using GitLab the way we're hoping they will. So we're kind of representing that, and then external tools if they have them. I'd like to be able to represent if a individual downloads it to like a local host, as well as if it's being pulled by Secure and Defend or from other sources. So that is the overview of what is actually downloading all of these things. And then the latter part is the Gandalf's beard, if I've ever seen one, is the usage history, which is every time it downloads, we tell them what pulled it. So you can see in the example, it was pulled by a specific pipeline, on job, whatever, and here's the time. The next one, Nico downloaded it, and so on. Just representing where that package is going, because that's kind of a black box for our users right now. And when you start thinking, for a developer, that information isn't quite as useful, but when you move up to the DevOps, to the secure quality, things like that, if there's a package that they've discovered has a vulnerability, the next important thing is, well, what's using this package so we can get rid of that vulnerability? That's what we put together for the design. We have the MVC kind of locked up because it's pretty straightforward. But what I would really like to know, especially as all of the technical experts who actually use packages, what is some other usage data that we could look at, that we can investigate? What are different ways that we could present it in terms of sorting, filtering, anything like that, that could enable users to understand not just that their packages are being used, but how, where, and when.
May I make a comment?
Of course.
So looking at the history gave me an idea. If we have all the stats saved, we will be able to devise how critical is a package for a certain organization. in the meaning that if a package is pulled by a lot of different actors, especially a lot of different pipelines, it means that if I break this package, I'm going to be stopping everything, right? Instead of a package that is single of a single project, maybe it's okay if it breaks and it's going to be a showstopper for the whole company.
That makes a lot of sense. And then I wonder if we could actually use that to partner with security and compliance on that side, because they have a grading metric in terms of vulnerability and stuff like that. If we can then say like, this is a vulnerability, not just because it doesn't have the correct licensing, but also it's used in every project in our organization. So it is actually quite critical. I think that's a really good call out.
I love this design, by the way, Ian, but I was wondering, what about like, if the package is being used in other projects, would that fall under other? Do you think it would be worth listing which projects it's being used in or pulled by?
Yeah, in the design, I represented that by the pipeline itself. So you could tie it back to the project or however it's being used, especially with organizations that I've heard where one project may hold the package, but then the pipelines are in another or a different location. So I felt it was the priority, but I think it would be good. The more we can show where this package is used throughout GitLab, the more value we show that packages in GitLab everywhere. And so the more sticky it becomes, and it really is to our benefit along that route. And for context, oh, sorry, go ahead, John.
I was just going to say that something that's usually functionality of package managers is the correlation between downloads and package version. So you get to see what are the versions that are used the most and the least.
That's a really good call out. We have been, from the design perspective, at least pretty intentional that each version of a package is a unique entity that gets its own UI and stuff like that. But we could certainly explore the idea of here is package name X, and then here's version 1, and it got pulled 1,000 times. Version 2, it got pulled 2,000 times. Version 3 has never been used, so there's a problem there. I could definitely see that being useful, especially for organizations who revolve around updating their packages more frequently.
Yeah, I guess my question was, do we have a plan to add filtering to this so I could filter the rate at which the top chart based on the bottom pie chart to sort of say, I want to see internal only or I want to see external?
That's a really good question. I think, I don't want to call out Steve, but I think he mentioned a similar idea of kind of correlating the 3 different areas and being able to filter it down to understand it better. That is certainly something we could explore, and we could do it at the top level to allow us to say, I want to know all of the pipelines and the different projects that have pulled it, and that's all I really care about. So if an engineer downloads it, it doesn't mean anything to me. We could certainly look at that.
And I guess the inverse of that would be, is can we roll up this data across packages, across the different package repositories?
Yes. I have not thought about that, Dan, I will admit, but that would be really interesting to start elevating those kinds of charts and usages. So we could do it by project, which may be odd, but being able to be a group level DevOps admin who doesn't want to really dive into the project level and say, this package is being used frequently, or this package that shouldn't be used is getting used, and surface those at a higher level, for sure.
And then annoyingly, the other one would be, how do we pivot on this data to look at it from the other perspective of, like, instead of having the pie chart, have a look at this in the context of internal pipelines and what are they broken down by across the package repositories? Or could I look at it from a users, what are my team pulling down the most? What are they looking at?
I think there's a really unique opportunity there. I would be hesitant to start getting too into the pipeline usage on our page. However, I think there's a great opportunity for cross-stage collaboration where we could go to Vithika and Nadia on the pipeline side and start surfacing how often certain packages are being used, or make it a little clearer when things are being used in their pipeline from the package registry.
Thanks, Ian.
Any other, well, I think one thing you were looking for is like, what can we do to move this MVC forward? Like, is this possible? Is this design feasible? Is it what's a good first step maybe that we could take to move in this direction?
Yeah, that is definitely a good question. And I think one of the things from the usability standpoint is just being able to get that chart of how many times was it downloaded this week versus last week. That's definitely the first thing that we need to show them in terms of what matters from the UX side of things. A question around that same line, especially when we get into the Gandalf's beard, where it's just this huge string of data. I could imagine as often as packages are added to pipelines because they're running every time there's a merge request, that's going to get huge. And so my question is, can we feasibly store that amount of information? Is it reasonable to have it? And is there a way for us to build out the design in the back end to start accommodating it instead of needing all of it at once? And that's technical information that I don't have, so it's hard for me to steer the design that way. And that's true for both the package registry, which is where we're focused on in this design, as well as the container registry when we get there. A lot of these same usage data patterns apply to both areas.
Yeah, it might be interesting to collaborate a little bit with the product intelligence team that deals with usage ping and snowplow and all of that good stuff. To see if we can utilize any of those tools that we're already using to gather some of this data. Because I've experienced where you can use like roll up tables and sort of just aggregated data in the standard database to track weekly and monthly counts. But we might already have systems in place we might be able to use in joint efforts with those teams.
I think in the past we discussed log based approach. I remember having a conversation around it with David, where we would attach a log of event to every package manager and to every package that we could use to build up this kind of information that we are looking for. Now, it was a little bit of time ago, so I'm not that sure if it's the right direction.
I recall Gigi working on an event-based system for pulling packages per user or something like that. And the moment he enabled it on production, like the table was filled in a super quick way. So the growth was not viable. So he switched to Redis directly.
And for that, we have monthly counts. I don't think we ever turned on the weekly counts for that data. We were too concerned about it, but we do have monthly data coming in that shows by user, number of packages downloaded, that kind of thing. So could we start with monthly, or because do we have that data already? Would that be a faster path? Would you be okay with that from a design perspective, Ian?
It would certainly start us somewhere and get us on the page in terms of usage data. However, from the usability standpoint, usually the full month kind of lead time is a little long for them to make decisions based on that. So it'd be good to present the data because we have it, but definitely one of the priorities will be to refine it down to a more actionable cadence.
I feel the same way with the monthly data. It's like it's a little too long in between to make decisions on, although it's helpful once we have it.
Exactly. So it would be good to add, but we certainly needed to make that leap down.
A question, is the historical values important in your opinion, or we could have like weekly data that we trash after 2 months or even every month?
From what I've heard, the historical data is valuable, especially if you're looking at it has been consistently used for 6 months and then all of a sudden it caused a problem. So that kind of information is helpful when troubleshooting or understanding the impact of something.
But the granularity, is it needed to be weekly while proceeding over time, or they can be compressed? I don't know, you get the 1 week data for the last 2 months and then it becomes monthly and then it becomes yearly, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, that's a really good question. I would imagine from the usability standpoint, at least the being able to get at least the last 30 days or the last 90 days or whatever the time window is of data, and we kind of present it as this is just showing you the latest stuff in the history, would be really useful still. Be good to get it longer, but especially for the bottom section where we're actually saying it was this pipeline, blah. That being a little bit shorter, I think would be more reasonable and wouldn't shock users that there was a limitation there. It'd be good to expand it out, but I live in a fantasy land of unlimited storage, so I'll accept that.
Would a good action item be to open an issue to explore like what is possible and what types of tools we may or may not already have?
That sounds like a great first step. And I would love to collaborate during that investigation with the design so that we can make the best use of what data we have and we can get creative on how we present it to make it seem like we have more robust data than actually there and then actually start filling it in. That would be a great next step.
Yeah, can you ping me on that one as well, please, Steve? I've done a lot of work in the past with time series data and this type of problem, so wouldn't mind
Cool.
having a chat about that too.
Yeah, I'll open an issue.
All right. Any other last thoughts before we move to the next thing? Okay, thank you all so much. That was really helpful.
Ian, you have the next item. It's the one that we've put off. It's been at the bottom of the agenda for a couple of milestones. It's reviewing the dependency proxy user interface design. I could pull it up if you want, or we could postpone till.
I think we haven't made any changes since the last time we reviewed it. The question I have at this point, and I don't, maybe we've investigated it and I've lost it, but from the design and what is currently implemented for the dependency proxy, what can we build? That's the question that, and Nico, please let me know if that's inaccurate, but that's the question I would really like to answer.
That's correct. Well, we did create a list of issues that are needed to kickstart those design. I think we also put them with which issue blocks what. So if we wanted to start that effort, we can follow up that chain until we can take whatever is unblocked and unblocks things down on the downstream.
These issues, right?
Yeah. This, I think I put this list a little bit of time ago. It should be accurate, but maybe something, because it's filtered by the one that I created, because we created them in batch at that meeting, that sync meeting.
Okay. Yeah, if I recall, it's mostly like we need to start with setting up GraphQL to bring some of those attributes forward to the front end.
Okay. So maybe after the GraphQL work for the package registry is done, we could move to the dependency proxy GraphQL. Doesn't have to be Nico, but I'm just, he's like, I'm so done with this GraphQL, but.
No, I was just about to request a t-shirt, like GraphQL man or something.
I like it. Okay, that makes sense. I added a note here, and we talked about this yesterday in the quad planning, but a couple of things on this. So we've been hearing requests that people would like to use the dependency proxy to pull images from ECR and GCR as well, and maybe have some way of making it more generic. That's not on the front end or the design front, but I wrote it down, so now I have to mention it, you know. Yes, exactly. And yes, definitely, of course you need a shirt. I think that's a wonderful idea. Okay. The next item is me. So other feature ideas I've been hearing a lot about are the dependency firewall. We've had a couple of customers come and say they're using Nexus and they are really liking the feature of the firewall that allows them to basically say, never download a package with this author or this license type or anything like that. I've been just telling everyone that we are not going to get to that for quite a while because it's lower on our roadmap. We do want to get to it, but I just don't see that we have the time or space to get to it right now. I'm wondering if we could talk about an idea for an MVC, like would an approved ban or in a ban list for packages be something that we could implement as an MVC, or is it something that is just, there's too much tangled up in it to deliver it?
What will be the criteria to identify a banned package, like by name and version?
Yeah, let's say by name, version, and license is the three things I hear most frequently.
Is this something where we should open up to the secure and defend team and kind of push towards them to do it, and then we implement it or in the roundabout way? Or do you think this is something that we should?
They're not going to implement this because this is our, I tried. This is our category. It falls on us to do it. I think honestly, I mean, yeah, it seems like we're going to wait on this until we are a little further along. I was hoping that there's a minimal MVC here, but I think we need to be a bit further along until we get to this. Okay. All right, let's skip that item then. Joam, do you want to verbalize the next comment?
Yeah, I saw that we have plans to expand the scope of the dependency proxy to support other external registries. And I think this is a good time to think about applying a quota and expiration policy on the dependency proxy cached artifacts, because it's easier if we do it now rather than later, because later may be a bit too late. And it's better if we don't go down that route.
And
It's been discussed that we could set up like a simple setting where, you know, the dependency proxy cache will clear every week, 30 days, whatever, automatically, and users can change that time range. Would that be maybe a good starting point in terms of like something we can provide?
Yeah. So in the comment that I linked there, basically I think we can do two things. One is a TTL, which is what you said, Steve. Basically, define a TTL for each object. If users download that object, in between we can delay the TTL, push it forward. And the second part is basically a hard limit for how big a given amount of objects can be. And if we go over that quota, we will drop the oldest ones until we are back in control.
Does the dependency proxy storage contribute currently to any limits that we have, like group limits? No.
Yeah, my question is, do we have sort of a published opinion or whatever we want to characterize it as like in general with package data, we'll have TTLs, we'll have limits? I know this is a conversation and I see we're recording, so I'm not mentioning specific things because I don't know where this conversation will end up. But we do need to consider this in general. So maybe I'm wondering if we have in general sort of published a, hey, you know, for efficiency's sake, we're going to end up having these sorts of TTLs as a default and all that sort of stuff.
No, the only limits we have right now on packages are in the maximum file size, individual file size that can be uploaded. We don't have any limits on the registry, either registry, in terms of how much you could store or anything like that. This might be a little bit different because it's a cache. We do have like for instance, any build artifacts that get built, I think they automatically get expired after 30 days or something like that. If it's not 30, it's end days. I don't remember the exact number. So we have some policy in terms of GitLab clearing the cache of objects, but not for our stage in particular yet.
And then I guess if we, I'm sort of thinking of this in general as data retention, right? Like, and so if we're thinking about it for .com, that's one thing, and then capabilities for self-managed customers to be able to configure this, disable, enable as they see fit. would be something else to add to it. But in general, is this idea of like, here's our perspective on data retention, and this is the model we're going to follow, and then share that with people generally so that they can contribute, make suggestions, raise concerns, that type of thing.
Yeah, I think that will be a theme for the second half of 2021 for our team too. But for the dependency proxy, I think we could take a stronger opinion because we already have the artifact expiration in place, so we could mimic that. And I like Joam's idea about having a setting. So if we set it to 30 days, then self-managed can adjust it to never if they want to use up the storage. But yeah, I like that idea.
Yeah, and in the end, it's just a cache, so we can get rid of the data in the worst case scenario. Next time someone tries to download it, it will have to be pulled from upstream, so it's never actually lost, the real data.
Yeah, and me and Tim actually were on a customer call a while ago now, and it wasn't for this exactly, but they wanted something where an admin of the GitLab instance could set a limit for expiring data that individual repositories, individual groups could set a more restrictive limit, but they couldn't set a more generous limit. And I think that's a pretty interesting idea, and I think that applies to any multi-tenant instance of GitLab, whether it's .com or large self-managed installs.
I feel like it's a good time to schedule this issue upcoming before we make the changes to add other registries. Thanks, Joam, for bringing that up. I'm going to try and schedule that for an upcoming milestone.
One thing that I wanted to add, because we're talking about expiring cache things, is that some of the users have talked about wanting to individually select cache things that don't expire because they're incredibly important or they're part of a immutable build they want to be able to replicate. So maybe not as an MVC, but to keep in mind being able to kind of lock a cached item so it can't be cleared is something users have talked about. I don't know how that impacts the technical implementation, but something to think about.
Yeah, I'm kind of worried about that from a security perspective. I guess just requires some tooling to allow an administrator to sort of manually clear a cache if they determine there's some issue with it, like some security failure or, these types of, I can't even brain right now, but there's types of attacks on the supply chain attacks. If it's permanently cached, we've got to have a way to invalidate it as well manually, right?
Do you think that needs to be on an object by object basis, or should there be like a big red button that just clears the cache, resets it completely, or both?
Yeah, I'm not sure I'd want to determine that without sort of thinking about the usability aspects. But in my head, if I'm manually setting something, I probably manually want to clear it, just because that kind of aligns with how I'm working with it. But I think a big red button, as it were, would probably be helpful in the event of something having a problem, because I'm sure we've all seen scenarios where we have something cached that's actually not correct, and then we need to get rid of it, or we get something cached from the wrong source. Maybe there's some DNS attack, and it's like, okay, this is permanently cached, but we've had some DNS type scenario where it's then cached the wrong object, and then we're accidentally making everyone use this one thing, right? So I think there's definitely scenarios where we want to have both of those things, but yeah.
Cool. Anything else on that topic? All right. Sometimes when I read these items, because I add them throughout the month, it's like I get a snapshot into historical Tim, and I'm like, oh, what was he doing in that moment? So this one I wrote, I think after maybe I interviewed one of the candidates for the engineering manager positions. And it just made me think that, I forget what question they asked me, but it made me think about onboarding people. And it's been a while. All of us have been on the team for quite a while. I was wondering if there are things, thinking back to 1.5 years ago, if anyone had any ideas for helping people onboard quickly. Was there anything that really helped you? Or is there anything that we could do to help our future cohorts onboard as seamlessly as possible?
Yeah, I think just to get the conversation started, historically we had onboarding issues for people. We determined, information that was relevant to the person and where they were joining the team, because we have these sort of functional areas in package. And we sort of tried to figure out simple tasks that someone pick up that initially at least weren't scheduled, just to allow that person plenty of time to get up to speed. We do still have a template for the team that we used, so that's still a thing. So I think probably a good first step would be to review that template, and the people in the team can take a look and determine if that works for all of the functional areas that we have in the team. Update that, and I can contribute to that as well. And then from there, I think the other thing we recognize about onboarding people is, through looking at data from multiple teams, trying to reduce that timeline, because it's anywhere from 1 to 6 months, depending on what's going on. I think 6 months seems like very high and not desirable. So that's not something we want to think of as a target by any means. And then the other impact that we're seeing in data and doing analysis across various teams is that just the whole, the capacity of the team is reduced in general, because the team, we all work together, right? And we all add value to each other and deliver more because of the presence of the team. And so when someone's out because they're coaching or mentoring or onboarding, buddying, that's now a word, that means less capacity in the team. So we just sort of account for fewer deliverables, I think, as we at least initially get team members. And then the other patterns that we have is everyone has a one-on-one with each other. So these sorts of things, that's sort of more like mechanical onboarding, set up all the meetings, add people to the meetings, add them to the async retros, all that stuff. Go ahead, Ailey.
Yeah, so in my onboarding template, there's just a bunch of Rails specific stuff, it just wasn't useful to me as a Go programmer. And it wasn't optional, so it was a bit weird.
Definitely. Steve, do you want to speak to your comment?
Yeah, it looks like we're agreeing that's partially the fault of members of the team in creating these onboarding issues and thinking, oh, this could be useful. We should learn about these things, and because this is what I'm doing.
Yeah, I think fortunately we're a little ahead of that curve now. I mean, I know when you joined the team, Haley, we were pretty early in the sort of formalizing of hiring Go engineers at GitLab, and so it was pretty early days where we were like, what are we doing? So I hope we'll address that, and having you and Joam in the team will definitely be helpful there. And I think the one other thing I might add here is I think I definitely want the whole team to look at onboarding. The template, I'll go find it. But I definitely need Sophia, Ian, and Tim, as well as myself, to look at it and make sure it's addressing the quality product design and product management practices in the team, just sort of make sure that people are aware of those elements. So, Nico.
Yeah, so I wanted to say, even though we have the onboarding buddy, sorry, the buddy system, I think encouraging and stressing it helped a lot. So for me, I got up to speed much faster by having a few sync with Nick than reading any documentation and other thing that I agree that you still need to do, but the sync time is really valuable in the beginning.
I was adding that I totally agree. I've experienced through my own onboarding and through helping onboard others, the difference between kind of only meeting once with your onboarding buddy ever versus kind of having a regular catch up and being able to be more comfortable pinging each other and having more comfort in interaction is much better and more helpful.
Ian, I think you have the next item.
Oh, I do. My question was for onboarding on UX, getting to dive into the research is obviously pretty big and important. And we as a group have worked really hard that engineers are also have all of that user data and user research context. In terms of onboarding as an engineer, would including all of that research information or some TLDR version of that information, would that be useful or would it just be overwhelming data until you kind of got comfortable?
Yeah, I definitely want to add some element of this to onboarding. I think we could think about onboarding as sort of like the company onboarding. I think most of us probably remember, there's this whole series of we need to do these sort of things today or this week or whatever. And then there's a bunch of like, hey, here's some longer term stuff to look at. So maybe we can think about it in those terms, but I think it's really valuable to make sure there's a point of reference for people. And then, excuse me, setting that expectation up front and sort of saying, hey, here's all this data we've generated that's really helpful would be great, but without sort of context, it could be hard to digest, I think. So maybe it would be useful to have some sort of pairing or something like that on those sorts of items to give someone a bit more of a quick view of it.
That makes a lot of sense.
Cool. Thanks for all that. If there's nothing else, we can move on to the next item. I shared an issue for discussion. So something that's happening from the engineering and product perspective is they're trying to dedicate for stages with high levels of adoption and usage. They're trying to dedicate more time for scalability and performance. I'm sure you've heard me say this and Dan say this and everyone else. But it's up to our team to define which metrics and success criteria we have. So I just wanted to open up this discussion and see like what metrics we might think are important that we're not currently tracking that relate to quality or performance. It could just be a quick brainstorming session if anyone has anything top of mind, or we could have this async in the issue.
And we have on the package dashboard a days since last incident.
Oh, I love that one. Yeah.
Just a question, Tim. The issue that you linked here, is it the intended one? Because just perhaps it was something else.
Oh, that's the wrong issue. Yeah, that's really well done by me. I'll have to find the proper issue now. Okay, hold on. Dan, do you have that issue available? That MR?
I remember seeing it. I'd have to go
Okay.
out for it. Sorry.
I'll dig it up right after this because I think I have to do some finding. Joam, you want to add your point?
Yeah, I was going to say that if you're looking for a single metric, maybe smash all of the API endpoints together and track the average response time and also the average number of database queries. Basically get everything, every single route together smashed in a single average, and then you can easily track progress by seeing the line decrease, hopefully.
Should we separate routes that serve objects that are, I think that's a bigger, there might be some delay that's not necessarily that same kind of metric, right?
Yeah, I would rather divide things in package types because the usage is really not the same. As an example, if you have a Maven project and GitLab is one of the registry, the GitLab registry will get pinged for all the dependencies of the project. Whereas if you use, I don't know, npm, GitLab will only get pinged for the given dependency. So the usage, it's not the same. I'm not sure that it's a good idea to aggregate all the metrics. Also, the upload request could be quite long. On NPM, they are not workhorse accelerated. So the upload request could be quite long depending on the artifact size.
Yeah, I think I'm up next. AppDex, mean time to resolution were the ones that I was thinking of. Definitely talking more sort of operational measures.
I added just cost for storage and network to make sure that nothing is spikes out of nowhere. It's probably good to monitor. Steve has the next one.
Yeah, I was just thinking, would it be helpful to sort of track the average error rate for any given package type to help monitor against availability?
I think that would be helpful. I think that's because we don't know how often, let's say, npm's throwing an error now. We don't measure that at all. So if it's happening like 5% of the time or 90% of the time, I don't know. We don't have it in our dashboards always.
Yeah, I think we might be able to look at that data, but we don't necessarily track it or monitor it anywhere.
Yeah, I think.
Yeah, we definitely have the. Sorry, Haley, go ahead.
I think as this applies to container registry, we need to be careful because the way clients interact with it. Oh my gosh! 1 second. The way clients interact with the container registry is they make a lot of head requests that during the happy path are going to 404. So I think that's a quirk of the container registry, and we don't need to. That's noise we need to eliminate. So I'm wondering if this is going to be another thing where it has to be per package type or like service type. If it's going to have to be bespoke to that.
Yeah, and the thing I was going to say is part of the thing is we track it and the org tracks it and alerts on it, but not in the context of the specific, registry or repository that we're talking about. So at the scale that we start seeing a spike in errors, that's one of the incidents we saw is we never saw it pop up on the radar enough for ops, for infra to look at it. Because it's just a small number of errors in the scheme of things. But for us in the context of Maven, for example, it was a significant spike in issues. So, that's one of the values there, I think, of having specific lead to various components that we're working on that doesn't exist.
In previous lives, so I've been in an office and we would have a big giant TV screen with a dashboard that is showing, number of errors and days since last incident, like Steve mentioned. Should we have a location that we kind of have all these quality and performance metrics that we could visit and track and be alerted if something is spiking? Free TVs for everyone? I don't know.
we definitely. Sorry, Sophia. Go
No,
ahead.
I was just gonna ask because how are we actually being alerted about any? Do we have baselines and how are we being alerted about this?
Yeah, we have service level indicators for each API. That's true for package and container registry, and those have a threshold. Actually, two thresholds. One is the satisfiable threshold. So if everything stays under that given amount of time to deliver a request, then everything is okay. And then there is a tolerance threshold, which is above the desired one. And that's when we start getting alerts because we are starting to get burned on the service level indicators. And those are all in Grafana. We are just not alerted because those alerts go to whoever is on call and infrastructure teams.
Are we more interested in alerts in this case or trends? So what is more valuable for us to look at?
What do you think?
Both. Both. Even though the alerts are probably handled in first response from the infra team, not by us, because we don't even have the access probably to deal with it immediately, while trends can prompt us to catch something early.
I agree. Yeah, I think it would be nice to be able to see like performance over time, scalability, or yeah, like error rate over time, and because we might see like slow degradations in something, so it'd be helpful to monitor over time.
Well, I think we also have to look at when we're talking about monitoring and usage and all this, we have to think about capacity as well. And so that's going to be really helpful to understand. Not necessarily something we have in the context of what systems we're using, but for example, something that's fairly isolated like the container registry. We probably need to think about our own capacity planning and our own, like how close we are getting to those sorts of capacity limits. Should we start an issue and put all this in there? Because I'm just looking at the time and I want to, there's a couple of other items in here.
That would be great. Do you want to open an issue and share it since you proposed it? It's like
that's fair.
Who speaks of the issue first must create it.
No, that's not a good way to have like engagement, I think. I don't want to propose an action because then I'll have to do it. That's sorry. Yeah, no problem. I can do that. Do you want me to just create it in the GitLab project, or you want it in like a package project?
I like the GitLab project because I think we could be transparent about what we're doing.
Cool. All right, I'll create an issue.
Cool. Thanks, Dan. All right, we have 2 minutes left. Steve, I took one of your comments from Slack and added it to the ThinkBIG agenda. So earlier this week or last week, I was checking out this open source project, Pulp. They have an API for generically managing packages. And I was kind of swooning over the format of the docs. It looked really awesome. And I shared it in Slack. And then Steve, you mentioned this, you added this comments. Do you want to verbalize this?
Sure. Yeah, and so I was just kind of commenting that like, since there are products like Pulp, which is essentially, it looks like, and I only briefly glanced at this, it looks like it's an API-based package manager or package registry, where it's not necessarily interacting with all of the package manager clients, but it's allowing you to generically use various APIs to manage your packages. It'd be interesting to look at that usage pattern a little bit more closely and see if we can expand on our generic package registry to add some additional functionality like that.
It seems like would we ever consider doing something like that instead of integrating with each package manager's API? Would we ever say, oh, we're just going to abstract that from the user? Because on one hand, that seems nice. On the other hand, it seems like as a user, don't you want to use the typical NPM endpoints? If you're using NPM, you don't want to like use a different API. You don't want to have to learn something new. Well, we are close to time, so this is now overtime. Dan, do you want to verbalize your comment?
Yeah, I think in the past, we generally wanted to build things in ourselves to increase integration and make sure we have opportunities to add metrics and understand what's going on. It's kind of been a GitLab thing for many, many years. So I think if we want to use like a third-party tool, that's fine, but I think we need to really have a very clear justification of what that saves us. And given that we've already sort of created a lot of this stuff, we'd be sort of going, okay, well, let's not work on it. Let's move forward with this other solution that's effectively replaces everything. We'd want to be really clear that that's not taking one of our key differentiators, our key strengths, and just offboarding it, as it were, into another company's effort or another team's effort. I know this is open source, so we contribute back to the project, which is cool, but like something to think about. In past, our patterns have been sort of like try something, fork it, use it, integrate it.
Well, I think we weren't talking about using Pulp. We were talking about like building something similar to Pulp.
Oh, I apologize. Sorry.
Sorry.
I retract my comment because I still wasn't paying attention. I apologize.
I really like the idea of maybe the abstraction layer makes sense when you start thinking about like integration with CI, where maybe you don't want to put in like if you could avoid putting in the full npm install with all the parameters, and you could just have something that just says package publish. That might be a nice way to integrate like a more generic package manager feature. So that's kind of the direction that I want to go. And then personally, I thought reviewing the documentation was helpful. I saw that, I know in our GraphQL API, we return all the hash values. So I just thought it was a helpful reference documentation. So I thought it would be good to share with you all here.
Maybe it's something we can like ask users about to see if they're interested in some of these things. Because it's hard to like, I mean, the question you asked that got silenced earlier of like, would this be useful? I think it's none of us have used this personally before or this type of system, so we don't really know. So it'd probably be helpful to get input from users.
Yeah, I'm definitely have my ears open, and although it sounds nice to be able to say abstract this away in CI, but we'll see if it's actually useful if we're solving a problem for people. So thanks for that feedback.
It would be great to do that user research as well in terms of our integration with CI and what users know how to do, and if they struggle with that and what they were hoping for or expecting, to find out if we really can just say package publish and it just does all the work itself.
Okay. Yeah, that sounds great. I added an item yesterday during our quad planning, but I haven't had time to follow up on it. But we were talking about what data is useful in understanding product usage and customer growth. So we could punt on that one until next time, since we're already in overtime. Anyone have anything else to add before we break? No? Great note-taking today. Wow, I was so impressed. There was so many people just storming it. It was great. All right, thanks everyone. I'll talk to you soon. Have a good day if you want to.